Imam Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam remains as a symbol of resistance in the face of evil and oppression. When the enemies realized that merely killing him was not sufficient to extinguish the flame of Islaah, of reform, of course correction, of resistance which he ignited, they sought to tarnish his legacy by shamelessly attempting to rewrite history, by portraying him as someone who, at least towards the end, was quite desperate to surrender to Yazid somehow and to give him bay'ah. The sad thing in all of this is that many naive Muslims, especially among the non-Shia, such as the Ahlul Hadith and the Salafis and Atharis, general mainstream Sunnis, sometimes have shown a willingness to fall for this deceptive narrative. The narrative that says that Imam al-Hussein gave an offer to surrender himself to Yazid ibn Muawiyah and somehow agreed to basically do a U-turn, wal-'iyadhu billah, on this noble and sacred mission that he had set out to accomplish. The rest of the Ummah, they have shown a readiness and a willingness to fall for this narrative on social media, televised. So before we go into this narrative, let us try to also understand what are the motivations behind this narrative. So the first thing that you need to keep in mind is that the very act of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam rising up against Yazid served to demolish what the Umayyads wanted to turn into a core pillar of religion, namely the belief in the impermissibility of rising up against Muslim tyrants. They did succeed to some extent, as can be seen from the fact that the founding fathers of Sunni orthodoxy managed to sneak in this doctrine and they codified it into the Sunni creed, where it remains as a key article of faith in the sectarian Sunni creed. Even though this is not an issue of aqidah, it's not a theoretical issue so much as it is a practical jurisprudential issue. This is the essential Sunni creed. You see, it mentions وَلَا نَرَى الْخُرُوجَ عَلَىٰ أَئِمَّتِنَا وَوُلَاةِ أُمُورِنَا. We do not believe in the permissibility of rising up against our leaders and our rulers. وَإِنْ جَارُوا, even if they are unjust, oppressive, exceed the limits and cross the bounds, we are not allowed to rise up against them. وَلَا نَدْعُ عَلَيْهِمْ. You can't even do dua against them by complaining to Allah to take action against them. وَلَا نَنْزِعُ يَدًا مِنْ طَاعَتِهِمْ. And we do not swerve from their obedience. وَنَرَى طَاعَتَهُمْ مِنْ طَاعَةِ اللَّهِ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ فَرِيضَةً. And we see their obedience as being part of Allah's obedience, as an obligation. مَا لَمْ يَأْمُرُ بِمَعْصِيَةٍ. So long as they don't order a sin. But obviously, this naturally raises a very troubling question even for the Sunnis, which is, if this doctrine that we cannot rise up against unjust Muslim rulers, if this doctrine is really aqidah, how come the very grandson of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Rayhanatu Rasulillah, the flower of Rasulullah, the source of his joy and happiness, Husaynu minni wa ana min Husaynin, ahabballahu man ahabba Husayna. Hussein is from me and I am from Hussein. May Allah shower his love on whoever shows love for Al-Hussein. Al-Hasan wal-Hussein sayyida shababi ahli al-Jannah. That Hassan and Hussein are the masters of the youth of paradise. And this is accepted by both Shia and Sunni scholars. So on the one hand, you have Imam Hussein, this paragon of virtue. And on the other hand, you have a sect whose very sectarian creed is saying that the biggest action that Imam al-Hussein took in his life, which resulted in his martyrdom, rising up against injustice, this act is haram. This act is prohibited. This act is forbidden. It is against the aqidah. So how do you square this circle? At Al-Islaah, we are very used to looking at what sectarian gymnastics and copes look like on our side of the sectarian divide. It is when this question is asked, you start to get a taste of what sectarian gymnastics and copes actually look like on the other side. Some scholars will simply claim that, yes, we can't deny that Imam al-Hussein did this, but we can't also deny what is written in the creedal textbooks. So we reconcile by saying Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, wal-'iyadhu billah, made a mistake in ijtihad. You are saying this is part of religious belief. This is like tawheed and belief in nubuwah and belief in the final day of judgment. This is belief that we need for salvation. If this is the claim, and this is indeed the claim of the sect, then how can someone like the grandson of the Prophet make a mistake in a matter of aqidah? It's unfortunate, but yes, some people are forced to argue that we have to say it's a mistake in ijtihad, because if we don't argue this, then we have to admit that the sectarian belief that is found in the textbooks of the Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, that sectarian belief is wrong. And they're not willing to admit. This is basically the case with the followers of every sect. The followers of sects, they will be willing to compromise on everything except the sect. They will change history, reinterpret the Quran, do ta'wil of hadith, but they will not correct the principle that is enshrined by the sect. And this is unfortunately the kind of blind following that this ummah needs to move beyond, and it needs to come out of. Every sect does it. Every sect is doing it. We can continue doing this until the day of judgment, but we do not serve the truth. Imam al-Hussein, as he was setting out, he reminded the ummah of the religious backing. He said, أيها الناس, O people, إن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم قال من رأى سلطانا جائرا مستحلا لحرم الله ناكثا لعهد الله مخالفا لسنة رسول الله يعمل في عباد الله بالإثم والعدوان فلم يغير عليه بفعل ولا قول كان حقا على الله أن يدخله مَدْخَلَهُ. Indeed, the Messenger of Allah said, whoever sees a tyrannical ruler who makes permissible what Allah has forbidden, he breaks the covenant of Allah, he opposes the sunnah of the Messenger and acts among the servants of Allah with aggression and sin. Whoever sees this happening and then does not oppose such a ruler with word or deed, it will be incumbent upon Allah to make such a person enter into the same fate as that ruler. The hadith of Imam Hussein, they will try to weaken it because of Abu Mikhnaf being the one narrating it, but as you can see, this is a Quran verified narration. وَلَا تَرْكَنُوا إِلَى الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا فَتَمَسَّكُمُ النَّارِ. Do not incline towards those who are oppressors, lest the fire may touch you. The Quran also warned, you support Zalimeen, you end up with them. You will find corroboration for this principle even in the sectarian Sunni hadith corpus. Man ra'a munkaran, whoever sees evil should stop it with his hands if he is able to do so. This idea that you cannot rise against a Muslim ruler, even in the lifetime of Imam Ali, this principle was opposed by personalities that are revered by the Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. For example, the Battle of Jamal. The Battle of Jamal is basically a revolt. They raised an entire army and they actually rose up against Imam Ali. Now the Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah and the Shia both are united in accepting that Talha, Zubayr and Al-Mu'mineen Aisha, they were all in error, but still they did not have this aqidah that says that you cannot rise up against a Muslim ruler. Same thing with Muawiyah. Muawiyah also revolted against Imam Ali alayhi salam and rose up against his authority. And within some Salafi and Wahhabi circles, Muawiyah is seen as a role model. If he is a companion, if he is hujjah on them, then it raises the question, how come he rose against Imam Ali alayhi salam? In any case, this is one cope to argue that Imam Hussein alayhi salam did mistaken ijtihad. The other approach that is taken is to say, no. It's much easier to just rewrite history and to try and claim that actually Imam Hussein never really wanted to oppose or challenge Yazid to begin with. What are you talking about? Imam Hussein did not want to rebel or revolt against Yazid. And so they reduced the great event of Karbala to what can only be called a comedy of error. But just as you have critical thinkers among Shia scholars who don't just blindly accept whatever has been popularly circulated within their sectarian circle, also have amazing critical thinkers within Sunni scholars. One beautiful example, Sheikh Abdul Sattar Sheikh, قالوا إنه قال اختاروا مني خصالا ثلاثا. This is what he writes. He says, they said that Al-Hussein said, choose from me one of three options. So this is the surrender narrative. Either I return to the place from which I came. Yani, I set out from Medina, I go back to Kufa. This is after he has been surrounded by the army of Yazid. So he says, let me go back to Medina. That's option number one. Or I place my hand in the hand of Yazid bin Muawiyah so that he may decide between me and himself as he sees fit. That Imam Na'udhu Billah is offering to place his hand in the hand of Yazid so that Yazid may decide. Number three, he says, or you send me to any war front, one of the frontiers of the Muslims that you wish, and I will be a man among its people. Now look at the analysis of this scholar. He says, even if we were to ignore the weakness of this report's sanad, its chain of transmission, it is also weak in terms of its matan. It says, if you examine the very text of this narration, you will see so many red flags and logical inconsistencies that you will be convinced that this report is a fabrication. It could never have happened. Number one, it contradicts the hadi. By hadi, he means the conduct, approach, and style, and the views and stance of Imam al-Hussein, who rejected the appointment of Yazid as heir apparent right from the beginning. He refused to give him bay'ah, oath of allegiance, while in his own residence, while enjoying honor and respect from all the Muslims. He left Medina in open refusal of the pledge, disregarded the advice of the well-wishers who urged him not to depart, remained firm upon this while in Mecca for an extended period, and sent his cousin Muslim ibn Aqil to Iraq in preparation for his movement. He then set out, ignoring every warning, to remain. He even dismissed the cautions and threats concerning the treachery of the Shia and received news and alerts of the killing of Muslim bin Aqil and others. Yet he still insisted on proceeding until he reached Kufa. So after all these admonitions, warnings, dangers, would he then agree to return from whence he came? He says, moreover, it contradicts the very character of Al-Hussein. Yani this surrender narrative, it goes against the very character of Al-Hussein. His nobility, his refusal to be humiliated, let alone that he would ever submit to Ibn Ziyad or anyone beneath him. Even more astonishing than all of this is what the report claims. It claims that Imam al-Hussein said, I place my hand in the hand of Yazid bin Muawiyah so that he may decide between me and himself as he sees fit. And in another version, Al-Hussein implored them by Allah and by Islam to send him to the commander of the faithful so that he might place his hand in his hand. So then this Sheikh asks, since when did Al-Hussein consent to something like this? When and where did Al-Hussein ever acknowledge that Yazid was Amir al-Mu'mineen, commander of the faithful? This narration was rejected by the great scholar Sheikh Muhammad al-Khudari, who said it is not correct that he offered to place his hand in the hand of Yazid, but they refused that submission from him and instead demanded that he surrender to the judgment of Ibn Ziyad. Such a request could never have been accepted by Al-Hussein, no matter what the circumstance was. Likewise, the historian Muhammad Izza Daruza stated, some have mentioned that these conditions and requests by Al-Hussein, may God be pleased with him, have no sound basis whatsoever. And one of the most critical evidences that this Sunni scholar will introduce after this is something that is found in the Maqtal of Uqba bin Sam'an. The Maqtal of Uqba bin Sam'an is not well known among the masses. It's called Maqtal al-Hussein, the reporting of Uqba bin Sam'an, who is Sahabi, who is a companion of Sayyid al-Shuhada, and he is the Ghulame Janabe Rabab. He is the slave of Rabab, the wife of Imam al-Hussein. Uqba bin Sam'an accompanied Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam from Medina all the way to Makkah, then from Makkah on the way to Kufa, then from Kufa to Karbala, until the very end he was with Imam al-Hussein. And they did not kill him because he did not fight in the battle, because his duty was he was a slave to Janabe Rabab, and because of that he was attending to the needs of the household of Imam al-Hussein. Basically a front row seat to everything that happened in the incident of Karbala. So after the incident of Karbala, when the Umayyads started circulating the surrender narrative, and it reached this slave of Janabe Rabab, and he was asked to give his view on this narrative. And Uqba bin Sam'an قال صحبت حسينا ألا والله ما أعطاهم ما يتذاكر الناس وما يزعمون من أن يضع يده في يد يزيد بن معاوية ولا أن يسيروه إلى ثغر من ثغور المسلمين. From Uqba bin Sam'an, who said, I accompanied Al-Hussein. I left with him from Medina to Mecca, from Mecca to Iraq. I did not leave his side until he was killed. There was not a single statement he addressed to the people, whether in Medina, in Mecca, along the road in Iraq, or in the encampment on the day of his martyrdom, except that I heard it. So he's an eyewitness and ear witness. And then look at what he testified. He says, I swear by Allah, he, Imam al-Hussein, did not grant them what the people circulate and claim. That is the three terms. That he should place his hand in the hand of Yazid bin Muawiyah, nor did he request to be sent to any war front of the Muslims. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam never made any such offer. It is all a lie. Rather, he said, let me go forth in this vast land that we may see what becomes of the affairs of the people. Then this Sunni scholar continues. He says, number one, it is unfortunate that most modern biographers of Al-Hussein or historians of that era mention the first report with the three conditions, that is the surrender narrative, while they ignore or are oblivious to and unaware of the second report narrated by Uqba bin Sam'an, who was constantly at Al-Hussein's side. The demands of historical integrity, scholarly responsibility, and respect for readers dictate that both reports, despite their contradiction, should be presented. Even if no further critique is offered, this fulfills the duty of full disclosure, especially since the two accounts diverge on a critical turning point, each with significant implication. Point number two, the Sheikh says, the second report, i.e. the one by Uqba bin Sam'an, completely aligns with the broader historical context and development of events. It also coheres, it gels well with the personality of Imam al-Hussein and his ijtihad in his uprising, and demonstrates his refusal to yield to Yazid or to any lesser authority, never mind placing his hand in Yazid's hand so that Yazid could decide what to do with him as he saw fit. Major figures and grand personalities had pleaded with him to accept less than that, and he refused. So you can see that this scholar here has critiqued the surrender narrative, and he has said it does not agree, we should reject it because it does not agree with the overall picture that emerges when you study the Maqtal of Imam al-Hussein. As he's leaving Medina, he says, Mithli la yubayi'u mithlahu. As far as the question of my giving bay'ah to Yazid, this is impossible. A person like me can never give bay'ah to a tyrant and corrupt person like him. Similarly, on the plains of Karbala, ألا إن الدعي ابن الدعي قد ركز بين اثنتين بين السلة والذلة هيهات من الذلة يأبى الله لنا ذلك ورسوله والمؤمنون وحجور طابت وطهرت ونفوس أبية من أن نؤثر طاعة اللئام على مصارع الكرام. He said, this illegitimate ruler, son of an illegitimate ruler, has left me no choice except for two things. Either I surrender with humiliation and I put my sword in its sheath, or I draw my sword and fight with dignity. And he says, as far as the choice and the option of humiliation is concerned, هيهات من الذلة, away be it from us. Allah refuses that for us. وَرَسُولُهُ, and his messenger also refuses this humiliation for us. وَحُجُورٌ طَابَتْ وَطَهُرَتْ, he says the pure and pious laps in which we were brought up, even they refuse this surrender and indignity and humiliation. وَنُفُوسٌ أَبِيَّةٌ, the resilience that is there in our hearts and in our souls, that refuses surrender. مِنْ أَن نُؤْثِرَ طَاعَةَ اللِّئَامِ عَلَى مَصَارِعِ الْكِرَامِ, that we should give preference to obeying the most wicked and ignoble people on this earth. We should give that preference over dying a death of dignity. Impossible, that cannot happen. Remember, this is the Imam who said, فَإِنِّي لَا أَرَى الْمَوْتَ إِلَّا سَعَادَةً, I do not see death as anything except a source of happiness. وَلَا الْحَيَاةَ مَعَ الظَّالِمِينَ إِلَّا بَرَمًا, and I do not see life with the oppressors and tyrants to be anything but an unbearable burden of shame and humiliation. Al-Abbas alayhi salam, he was presented a check of immunity. They said that, look, لا تقتلوا أنفسكم مع الحسين, we have obtained immunity for you, brothers, from the Amir. So don't kill yourself with Al-Hussein. We are guaranteeing your safe passage if you lay down your arms. And Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas alayhi salam, remember how he had responded by saying, لَعَنَكَ اللَّهُ وَلَعَنَ أَمَانَكَ, may Allah curse you and may Allah curse your immunity. أَتُؤْمِنُنَا وَابْنُ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ لَا أَمَانَ لَهُ, you give us and you offer us security when there is no security for the son of Rasulullah. May Allah curse such an immunity, which does not include the beloved son of the beloved daughter of Rasulullah. As you continue to read the Maqtal, and we invite everyone, read the reports, remove the sectarian bias, read the reports. Even as he was making his final advances against the enemy, there was a slogan which was there on his tongue. He was saying, Al-Maut awla min al-'ar, death is better than humiliation. Wal-'ar awla min dukhul an-nar, he says there is only one thing that can beat even humiliation, the fire of hell. When there is an option between death and humiliation, we choose death. When the only two options are humiliation and the fire of hell, then we choose humiliation over the fire of hell, because the fire of hell is the ultimate eternal humiliation. رَبَّنَا إِنَّكَ مَن تُدْخِلِ النَّارَ فَقَدْ أَخْزَيْتَهُ وَمَا لِلظَّالِمِينَ مِنْ أَنصَارٍ.